turn to retired Army four-star General Wesley Clark for insight. In addition to being a CNN military analyst, he's also a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. General Clark, you see the news out of Ukraine. What does it say to you about the effectiveness of the Patriot systems versus Russia's hypersonic missiles? Because, I mean, they'd been touted as being nearly impossible to intercept.
Well, that's what Mr. Putin said, but it turns out that the Patriot can intercept a hypersonic missile. After all, the Patriot was designed to intercept ballistic missiles that were incoming, and so they're moving at much more than 3 or 4 times the speed of sound. So the Patriot has the radar, the guidance system, and the energy in the missile to be able to strike an incoming hypersonic missile.
Do you know, I mean, how large Russia's supply of these hypersonic missiles is? I mean, can it afford to keep using them in waves of attack?
I think it's really a logistics issue for both sides. The question is, how many Patriot missiles can Ukraine afford to fire? And as I look at it, Anderson, it's a sort of strategic calculus by the Russians to try to exhaust the Ukrainians' air defense missiles prior to the time that Ukraine launches its main attack, so that Russia can deploy its tactical aircraft in an air-to-ground role against the Ukrainian counteroffensive.
We saw the founder of the Wagner Group claim that an American fighter had been killed in Bakhmut. Do you think Russia's made a mistake focusing so much of its forces on Bakhmut? I mean, not only the Wagner Group, but Russia's main army as well.
Well, it certainly seems to me like a mistake. We may never know why they did it, but it seems that it's become a symbolic objective. And the Russian high command has obviously told its generals, take Bakhmut, don't care what it costs, just get it. And so they've thrown countless assaults in there. They've taken a lot of losses, and now they're vulnerable to being actually encircled by the Ukrainians. And this would be a huge symbolic defeat for Russia. It might open the way to a surprise offensive that goes right through Bakhmut by the Ukrainians at the heart of the Russian positions.
What do you think a Ukrainian offensive will hope to accomplish?
Ideally, the Ukrainians are going to get an offensive going in the south toward Crimea. But we have to be prepared to be surprised. There's going to be more than one axis of attack. There may be one in the north, one in the east toward Bakhmut or Donetsk, and then one in the south, perhaps Melitopol, or maybe they'll go across the Dnieper.
Retired U.S. Air Force Colonel and CNN military analyst Cedric Leighton joins us now from Washington. Colonel, good to see you.
Good to see you too, John.
Okay, so these hypersonic Russian missiles, which were fired at Kyiv, known as Kinzhal, or that's Russian for dagger, one of Moscow's most advanced weapons, which Vladimir Putin claimed would overcome all existing and prospective anti-aircraft and anti-missile defense systems. So for Ukraine to say they intercepted 6 during the same attack, 6 with one blow, seems either incredible or incredulous. What are the chances Ukrainian air defenses are able to take out the hypersonic missiles, which in the past was considered possible, but only in theory?
Well, perhaps the hypersonic missiles aren't really hypersonic, John, and so that's something that we're going to have to examine. The Russians, of course, have touted the capabilities of the Kinzhal missile for several years now, and in the West, we believed that it was a very effective, highly useful weapon that was, in essence, a game changer in the field of ballistic missiles. But in this particular case, I think that what we're seeing is something that the Kinzhal was less than meets the eye. And if it's true that the Ukrainians were able to shoot down 6 of them, that's a significant dent in the purported Russian inventory of Kinzhal missiles, which was supposedly somewhere around 50 or so, according to Ukrainian intelligence.
So what do you think was fired at Kyiv by the Russians? If it wasn't the hypersonic, was it sort of old wine in a new bottle?
Yeah, I think that's possibly the case. I think that what we may have seen is a missile that has perhaps sub-hypersonic capabilities. It could still go fast, could still be a supersonic missile, but I'm sure the missile was not going 10 times the speed of sound, which would have been the maximum speed advertised for the Kinzhal.
Okay, well, for the Kremlin, the attack on Kyiv using a combination of air, sea, and land-based missiles and drones was, as you would expect, it was a complete success. Listen to this.
The purpose of the strike was achieved. All assigned objects are hit. A high-precision strike by hypersonic missile system Dagger In the city of Kyiv, a U.S.-made Patriot anti-aircraft missile system was hit.
So 18 missiles were fired, ballistic and supersonic, maybe hypersonic. The end result is some damage to a Patriot defense system, and that's been confirmed by the US. That doesn't seem good bang for your buck at the end of the day.
No, not at all. And in fact, the Russians seem to have had a huge difficulty, a huge problem in achieving the target list that they were purportedly hitting. So I don't think they were very successful. It's pretty clear that they achieved some degree of damage in certain areas, including partly the Patriot system, like you mentioned. But it is nowhere near what they were supposed to, what the spokesman out of Moscow said.
And all the time, the Ukrainian president continues to press for these F-16 fighter jets. He says they're needed to secure Ukraine's airspace to repeat performance of what happened on Tuesday. To that end, Downing Street released a statement. UK Prime Minister Sunak and Dutch Prime Minister Rutte agreed they would work to build an international coalition to provide Ukraine with combat air capabilities, supporting with everything from training to procuring F-16 jets. The Ukrainians are talking between 40 and 50 F-16s, enough for about 3 squadrons, I think. Is this more to do with Ukraine's mid to long-term security needs? Because it doesn't seem they'll be, in action for this counteroffensive.
Yeah, they're definitely not going to be in action for this counteroffensive unless they've been preparing them in secret, which is doubtful. But what I think we're looking at is, like you alluded to, John, a mid to long-term prospect, especially as Ukraine integrates itself even further into the NATO defense structure. And when that happens, which I'm sure it will, they are going to be getting F-16s or similar aircraft to really, in essence, put together not only an Air Force, but an integrated air defense package that will protect their airspace much better than they've been able to do before.
We've heard from the Kremlin, which has warned Britain that there will be a military response after supplying these long-range missiles, cruise missiles, to the Ukrainians, as well as doing this training for the Ukrainian pilots on the F-16s. What exactly does that mean, some kind of military response?
Could mean several things, John. What I think they're looking at is trying to make it as difficult as possible for the British to provide support to the Ukrainians. The British are ignoring that, and they're proceeding, with the training for the tanks, for the various missiles that they're providing, and now for aircraft training, fighter jet training. So what the Russians will probably do is they'll probably try to up their game, perhaps in the cyber realm, perhaps in other unconventional areas, perhaps some sabotage actions. Those are the kinds of things that we can perhaps see, but the British are not going to be deterred by anything that the Russians are going to plan at the moment.
It certainly looks that way. Colonel Layton, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
You bet, John.